to be mindful of the time because we're starting at 3:30, which is a lot later than we normally do. But I know many people are going to go back to Little Rock for meetings, so let's be mindful of the time to testify and be to the point, and we'll get on with it. Our first speaker is just a minute, Chris. We're gonna bring up ladies first. Just a few minutes. Colleen Lindgren is the State Policy Manager of the Pacific Legal Foundation. If you would come to the front and recognize yourself and who you're with for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Colleen Lindgren, and I'm with the Pacific Legal Foundation.
You're ready.
Thank you. So, chairs and members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to join you today. As mentioned, I'm the State Policy Manager at Pacific Legal Foundation, and that means that I'm privileged to come to places like Arkansas and work with legislators like you around the country to apply constitutional solutions to policy problems. Pacific Legal Foundation is a nonprofit public interest law firm that has dedicated several decades to defending clients free of charge when their constitutional rights are violated. Since our doors opened in 1973, we've advocated for the right of all Americans to put their property to productive use for the betterment of themselves, their families, and their communities. Property rights are the cornerstone of liberty. The right to own, enjoy, and put property to productive use is a source of personal security, dignity, and prosperity that enables individuals to shape their destiny. The Fifth Amendment guarantees that Americans shall not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And the 14th Amendment reiterates this protection, adding, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall bridge the privileges of citizens of the United States. Yet, all too often, we see the promises of the 5th and 14th Amendments are tossed aside or outright attacked. Courts have largely ignored questions surrounding land use, and governments at every level have enacted laws and regulations that devalue property and trample individual rights. PLF has a long record of defending both property rights and the proper separation of powers, including 18 U.S. Supreme Court wins, and we're dedicated to holding the regulatory state accountable. Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the U.S. Constitution establish 3 separate branches of government which provide essential checks and balances to protect and promote individual rights. And state constitutions, like Arkansas's, follow suit. State constitutions also follow in addressing the rights of citizens, and Arkansas affirms these in its own Article 2, going so far as to say that the right of property is before and higher than any constitutional sanction. So with this as a foundation, there's a lot of room for Arkansas to build, figuratively and literally. Housing is top of mind across the country, and I focused the distributed materials and most of my remarks in this vein. But things like energy production and agriculture are close behind and deserve equal application of constitutional principles. So the good news is that there are principled and practical ways to approach all of these issues. Property rights are the foundation of innovation, sustainability, and opportunity. They're not merely legal entitlements. They're the framework through which people create value, steward resources, and pass opportunity to future generations. Yet in the name of things like environmental protection, property rights are often under siege. Landowners face ideological and often arbitrary barriers to putting their land to good use. And it seems to be fitting to discuss these issues here in the northwest corner of the natural state, a region that is known for as a rapidly growing base for business, and a state that's in the heart of America that is known for its beautiful and plentiful resources. Arkansans are industrious, from international trading to growing half of America's rice to leading in steel production. As state legislators, you're on the front lines of defending the right of your constituents to use property as a core environmental value. In the wake of the U.S. Supreme Court's 2023 decision in Sackett versus EPA, where PLF's clients defeated federal agency overreach that prevented them from building a home on a property without water, but which the federal government had declared a wetland, Overly regulated states, like your neighbor Tennessee, have started looking to their own laws to see what needs fixing. And on this particular issue, Arkansas is ahead of many states and does not regulate wetlands beyond what the federal government demands. This type of least restrictive mentality should be applied to all areas of regulation and is the solution to America's housing crisis. So in that vein, let's discuss several ways that you as legislators can come alongside localities to ensure property rights are protected and communities and individuals in Arkansas can thrive. The first approach is broad and twofold. The legislature should affirm that property rights must receive equal treatment with other rights in court. Judges cannot relegate them to less review or scrutiny, but this often happens. The legislature must require courts to apply the highest standard of review to government infringements on property rights, similar to other fundamental rights like free speech. The 5th and 14th Amendments are not lesser than the 1st or 2nd. And while this judicial backstop is important, it's equally crucial to proactively hold all levels of government in a state accountable when they restrict the use of property. This can be done by simply requiring governments to show their work, to have a compelling interest that justifies restrictions on the use of property. So that's things like protecting public health and safety or preventing genuine nuisance. A second set of reforms can set out to make housing truly affordable. The term affordable housing has been misappropriated for decades, most often referring to government subsidized projects and placing arbitrary restrictions on building and development that don't really consider market needs or demands. So not only is this approach unprincipled and limiting, but it clearly isn't working. Homelessness continues to rise, and housing prices have increased almost 50% in the last decade. You can't make housing more affordable by making it more expensive to build, but this is what the historic response has been. And there are 4 key things that state legislators can do to create accountability, efficiency, and predictability in permitting. First, you can enact reforms that block third-party objectors from suing to stop approved projects. So unless the challenger can demonstrate a real harm, they can't impede an approved project. Too often we see localities' efforts to increase the supply of housing stymied by lengthy and frivolous legal battles that may not be successful in court, but are successful at least in stopping development because it becomes too costly to wait. So not only is it costly in the moment, but it's also a potential cost that individuals or businesses must weigh before even applying for a project. So states should ensure this is not the case. And a similar reform addresses something called zoning protest, ensuring that these protests don't impede, again, approved zoning regulations that expand the use of private property. So where citizens have had the chance to engage in the democratic approval process, unharmed objectors should not get a second bite at the apple, and state laws should ensure this minority tyranny is prevented. As we've already mentioned, unpredictability is a deterrent to development, and states should ensure that permitting processes are not only timely, but fair. Implementing timelines allows local governments to have processes unique to their needs, but ensures that citizens have a predictable approval process. The state should also ensure that all permit applications that meet zoning codes and related requirements are automatically approved. All too often, projects are treated differently due to the preferences of those reviewing them, and not only is this unequal treatment unconstitutional, but it's counterproductive and not time effective. When the government creates a scheme, the least it must do is apply it fairly. And lastly, I want to touch on something called housing exactions, which is a term that you've probably heard, but maybe not known how to address. So last year, PLF won a legal challenge at the US Supreme Court that addressed unconstitutional exactions, which are a quiet but mighty culprit in making housing much more expensive than it ought to be. In this case, Sheets v. County of El Dorado, the Supreme Court said that the government can only impose requirements and conditions on development, like impact fees, where there's a proportionate nexus to the impact. So states should require that government shows its work when issuing those fees and ensure that property owners have a right to challenge them in court if that process is abused. And states should also do away with housing exactions that are very common that require the applicant to offset the cost of deed-restricted housing elsewhere in order to receive a permit. Not only is this a violation of a property owner's right, deed-restricted housing actually harms the residents it's supposed to help by capping the potential of their property. So in the interest of time, I'm going to end here. However, I'm happy to take any questions or chat with anyone offline. The materials distributed today show model language, reference states that have recently implemented reforms, and also contain some research. And I'm happy to answer any questions or follow up later. Thank you for your time.
Any members have any questions to go?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate your presentation, appreciate the work that you're doing. I was going through some of these recent reforms, and I saw that you had in 2025, Kansas passed the Fast Track Permit Act, but we also passed a Fast Track Permit Act in 2023 by Representative Underwood. And so I was just curious, I mean, is that similar to what you guys are proposing, or is it different? Did we need to improve it? Did Representative Underwood not do a good job? I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to understand.
No.
Do I need to go in and fix his issues? So.
No, and these are just kind of general things to be on the lookout for, and I'm really glad to hear that Arkansas has already looked at that. And this is not a referendum on that bill. This is just a compilation of what has recently been done in states. And 2023 was before my time working in Arkansas, so I'm glad to know that, and appreciate that you're already paying attention to that issue.
Representative Ray, your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you bringing up the affordability aspect on housing costs, because that is a key metric to the affordability crisis that so many people across the state and the country are facing. My question is specifically, is there any sort of rankings that your organization or similar organizations do that would show us, you know, how we compare to other states across the country in terms of overly burdensome land use regulations? And I know you've got a lot of legislation here that other states have done, but the second part of my question is are there any particular is there any particular state or states that you would say are sort of leading the way in this area?
Well, honestly, not just because I'm here in Arkansas, but I will say I think Arkansas is on a really good path right now. There were some really great bills introduced last year that made some progress, including one that addressed the issues I discussed here about raising the level of scrutiny in court and holding all levels of government accountable for restrictions on property. And Arkansas also passed a squatters reform last year, and there have been a lot of good conversations, and I think looking at some of the things that have been introduced in the last two sessions, there's some really great progress being made, and that's on par with what Montana has been doing. Montana, if you've paid any attention to the news in the last few years on housing, implemented 8 reforms 2 sessions ago, and then implemented a handful more in this past session. And they're really trying to get at the heart of these issues and figure out how to work with, you know, the various needs across the state, but also ensure that every constituent has these opportunities to have a home and be successful, take care of their families. And so Montana's a state that I would look to. We're actually in litigation. They're defending some of their laws right now that were challenged by individuals that don't want other people to have access to housing in their areas. And so that's definitely a state that I would take a look at. And to your first question, as far as research, one good source that I'm aware of is the National Association of Realtors. They frequently do studies on this, but we also are currently conducting some of our own internal research. At PLF, we have a strategic research team, and we're looking into trying to do some surveys, like you mentioned. And if there are ever specific things that you're looking at in Arkansas, we're also happy to kind of take requests and see if we can help out with that.
Thank you. And the last thing I was going to ask you is, it looks like a lot of these pieces of legislation that other states have passed, it looks like these are hyperlinks. Could you send us a digital version of this that we could look at the actual legislation? Thank you.
All right, any other questions from President Brown?
Thank you so much for being, am I on? Hello. Thank you for being here today. I just did a quick Google to find out what deed restrictions are. And so I recognize some of these. They're very prevalent out in California, pallets and what have you. And I know some of these are, we do these around here somewhere. But I have one question. What is a home run business restriction? Oh, home run, like a business in your home. Okay, how about home run? Adjacent structures, what might that be? If you're familiar with it.
For in the context of deed restrictions?
Yes, I just did deed restrictions, and I came up with a page that has 10 common deed restrictions you should know, and one of them they listed was adjacent structures?
So that, from my understanding, is a little bit less common. So that the types of deed restrictions that we mostly see in that our models, but also most of what our work on the litigation side has dealt with are restrictions on properties where it's usually something like a government subsidized property that where the sale or rental price is limited or something like that. So you're asking individuals who are seeking a permit for a separate project to subsidize that, and then you're also anyone who gets into that housing is limited with what they can do with it. So that's the most common type of deed restriction that we see. And I will note that where we work on this issue, any sort of private agreements, like say an HOA, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about really what government will be imposing on individuals. So the adjacent structures, I'm less familiar with that, and I haven't seen that come up a lot of places. But I'd be happy to look into it and get back to you.
Thank you, and that wasn't intended to be a gotcha question. Thank you for being here.
Any other questions? Public comment? Yeah, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. I think it's past time that we start treating property rights as they are, just as they are as important as all our other rights. The right to life, the right to freedom of press, freedom of religion, Second Amendment, all the others. So how we've kind of left off property rights, let them get behind. So I think it's high time we start looking at them like they are just as important as others. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Representative Charles. Any other comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Lindrum.
Thank
for
you.
your testimony. Now we have Chris with the Association of Arkansas County. Chris Valines. Chris, you come, identify yourself, you know the procedure.
I've learned after having been here a while that the microphones, just so y'all know, sometimes take just a second to pick up in this room. So when you get it, you might want to watch for the green light. But thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Chris Valines with the Association of Arkansas Counties, and really we so much appreciate you guys coming to our conference. This is our annual conference. We've got over 900 people in attendance here, and that includes 9 elected officials from counties across the state. So your judges, sheriffs, county clerks, circuit clerks, collectors, coroners, treasurers, JPs, and I'm probably missing one or two, but I love all you guys back there. But they're all here in attendance, so there's a very good chance over the next few days, if you're here and you're wandering the halls, you're going to see some people from back home that get a lot out of our conference. We also enjoy a long-standing tradition with city, county, local of inviting you to come and have a meeting at the conference, and we want to thank you guys for being here today. As evidenced by the number of people in this room, we've had a long-standing great relationship with our state government in this state, and enjoy that to this day. In fact, Speaker of the House Brian Evans helped open our conference earlier and talked about that partnership and our work together and the history of that. So I'm not here to talk about the issues that are on the table. I'm looking forward to hearing about them just like you guys. So I'm going to say welcome to the conference and turn the microphone over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valines. Next upon the agenda, we have Lindsay Wallace, Secretary of the Department of Corrections. Can we only got 3 chairs, can we bring, let's go ahead and Dexter, if you want to come on up. Denny, if you want to come on up, and Mr. Watson too. Anyone else here from the Department of Corrections?
I think that's good. I think that's good.
each one of you would, whoever's gonna speak first, just tell us your name, you with, for the record.
Do you want us to go down the line and then circle back?
Next meeting, I'll do.
Okay. Lindsay Wallace, Secretary, Arkansas Department of Corrections. I'll go this way first.
My name is Wendy Wear. I'm a Senior Vice President with CGL Justice Division.
Benny Magnus, Chair of the Arkansas Board of Corrections.
Dexter Payne, I'm the Director for the Division of Correction.
I'm Grant Hodges. Grant Hodges, good to meet you, member of the Board of Corrections.
Lee Watson, member of the Board of Corrections.
All right, Lindsay, if you want to start us off.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate y'all's time tonight and the opportunity to speak with y'all. I want to be brief because in the interest of time, I know you have a long agenda, and I think Ms. Ware's projections will be very demonstrative for you on where we are in terms of where we need to go with prison beds. But I wanted to kind of recap what we've done since Governor Sanders has come into office. Since she came into office in 2023, we've brought over 1,400 beds online, mostly within the Division of Correction. That includes the opening of the White River Correctional Facility, Phillips County Detention Center in West Helena, and then we've added a few additional beds, but I don't have the number in front of me for community correction centers. The next month, we are going to bring on a women's health unit with an additional 50 beds, and then the Board of Corrections approved an expansion at the Mississippi County Work Release Facility, which will net us 100 additional beds. But it's very early stages of that. Our facilities, and I'll let Director Payne and anybody else at the panel kind of speak more about this, but they're consistently running over 100% capacity. We have just under 30 facilities, 6 work release facilities, 14 traditional prisons, and 7 community correction centers. Our total jurisdictional count is just north of 21,000 offenders in our custody. That includes county jail backup, which is around 2,000, just north of 2,000, I think, today. So the pay plan has really helped. I know we've talked about staffing numbers in the past with vacancies. Our academies have been very full of late, and our vacancy rates are better than they've been in years. So we've seen the right trajectory with that. We've explored a lot of avenues that are available to address the backlog. We've examined procedures internally. We've looked at how we intake our inmates into facilities. One thing that we've done to try to expedite bringing folks in from county jails is with our community correction centers. We used to have a little bit of a log jam with those because they would get scheduled out to different facilities in the state. So it caused a little bit of a delay in getting them brought in. So what we've done is centralize that intake, which is right next to Washita River. So if a county's got some folks that need to go to a community correction center as well as a traditional prison bed, then they can drop them off on their way to Washita when they're bringing other folks. Something else that the parole board has been doing is looking at their procedures to see if there's any way that they can expedite any releases. They have been they've been utilizing it's a several years old law that's been on the books that actually authorizes them for certain offenders when they get to their transfer eligibility date, they can actually be released from county jails. So we're looking internally at all of the things that we could do to ease whatever the capacity issues are with the county jails, and we're very appreciative of the partnerships that we've created with the county sheriffs and with the counties themselves. I think we've been very fortunate, and I think the board will agree with that, to have a few really nice facilities that we've been able to utilize to create some relief for the counties. But I think Ms. Ware's presentation will be pretty demonstrative that we've sort of reached what our tipping point is within the department. I wanted to pivot to Director Payne to see if he has anything additional to add. You're good? Okay, well then I would really like to, I'm sorry, yes sir.
I have a question.
Yes sir.
The 21,000 that you mentioned, how many of those are non-violent offenses? And how many of those are federal prisoners that we're holding for fed?
I don't think we've got, I don't know that we have any that are just, we're holding for the federal government.
There are jails, there are county jails holding federal prisoners right now.
But I think
That's not under our
that's not
jurisdiction.
right. Do you want that, Mr. Magnus? Go ahead.
Senator Stubblefield, the committee, the federal prisons that are detained in the county jails are not under our jurisdiction.
I understand that, but some of these county jails are holding them so they can earn extra money for their jails, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how many non-violent offenders do we have out of the 21,000?
I don't have that.
I don't have that breakdown.
I just got it the other day for a legislator. Did you ask for it? Somebody asked for it, and I got it. I had to find it on my phone. I'm trying to
I don't
remember.
have that number.
It's about right at 50%.
So half?
Half is nonviolent, but y'all have to be very, I never like to say something that might mislead a committee or the legislature. So I wish in a few minutes I'll try to find exactly. I got I had a legislator call me the other day and want the numbers, and we got it. And I just don't remember what it was now, but it's going to be close to, say, 55, 45, something like that.
So we've got almost 10,000 nonviolent offenders at county jails and prisons. Would that be correct?
It's my memory. I'm going to keep looking here.
Can you give me just a brief list of the most common nonviolent offenses, Dexter?
Yes, sir. That probably would be theft of property.
Theft of property? What percentage of theft of property is? 30%? People stealing something?
Yes, sir. The non-violent crimes, theft of property, probably close to 25%.
Okay.
Those are the biggest.
Sheriff Montgomery might be in the audience. I got that information from him, for him. It wasn't the legislator, it was him. And I'm trying to find that text, but he might find it quicker than I do, because I did send that to him.
I have something I want to read to you. It says, we need to quit locking up all the people that we are mad at and lock up the people that truly deserve it. Throwing them in prison with a long sentence is a costly, short-sighted, irresponsible response. When we instituted these reforms in Arkansas, we witnessed a significant drop in our recidivism rate. As an added benefit, drug court rehabilitation models, such as community-based corrections, cost to the state significantly less than incarceration. Over time, these reforms save taxpayers millions, while also allowing and empowering offenders with the opportunity to regain, restore, and rebuild their lives. You know who said that? You know who wrote that? Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor Huckabee wrote that during his time as governor. Do you think he was correct? Do you think those words are accurate? Dexter?
Yes, sir. They're pretty accurate to me.
Lindsay?
Yes, sir.
You think they line up with what we're doing today? Since we have one of the highest incarceration rates in the country, and one of the highest recidivism rates, still agree that these words line up with what we're trying to do today?
Senator Stubblefield, I think we're making steps to try to improve the recidivism rate. I think there have been a lot of changes over the years with varying degrees of success, and I think that's what Ms. Ware's projections and her presentation will kind of explain how the population has changed. I will tell you, sir, we're working on programming to try to improve our recidivism rate. We're doing kind of a top-to-bottom analysis of operations across the board in Department of Corrections. The board is supportive of it. The governor's supportive of it. You all have been tremendously supportive of progress that we have made and are making and goals that we want. So I think we're in the process of looking at everything that we have program related, how we're doing business, how we're operating, to try to improve some of the outcomes for the offenders that are in our custody.
All right. Any other questions? Representative Bray.
Yes.
I guess I'll try to ask Senator Stubblefield's question a different way. What percentage of inmates in state prison at this time are felony offenders?
All
All
100%.
of them?
Okay, that's what I thought the answer was gonna be, and the reason I asked the question that I knew the answer to was because a lot of times, when people talk about nonviolent offenses, they say that to minimize the crime that was committed. There's a lot of people that would consider possession of child abuse sexual material to be nonviolent, but that's a very serious crime. If you have your car stolen out of your driveway, that's a very serious crime. So I just want to make sure that we're not minimizing the significance of some of these crimes, even though, you know, some might classify them just as nonviolent in nature. That's all I have. Thank you.
I purposely didn't answer the question a while ago because there's parts of what is said about quit locking up people we're mad at and only the ones we're afraid of. But when you have people in law enforcement that continue to arrest to somebody that maybe never do a violent crime, but they continue to prey on the public, prey on citizens of that district, we have to have a place to put them, because county jails sometimes cannot recidivate, and they can only hold them up for a year. So we have to have bed space to be able to hold those that just won't adhere to the laws of Arkansas and continue to violate. There'll be sheriffs that can testify. They got people that's in their facilities 16 times, 18 times. And when they finally cross that line to committing a felony, we have to have a place for them, even though it might be their first, per se, nonviolent crime. We just have to, as a society. And so I know for me, and I know a lot of people, you steal my car and you wreck it, it cost me $30,000, I'm gonna be real mad at you, you're right. But I also want you to be held accountable.
Representative Brown, you have a question?
Thank you all for being here, and I just want to harken back to our legislative council meeting on the 11th, where we learned a lot about these reentry facilities, and I know that you all are supposed to be providing legislative council with lots of reports with regard to that discussion. However, I was very impressed with what I learned at the reentry facility that I toured, and I would like to see if we can't use them more effectively, because they will cost the taxpayers a lot less money if we can. They will help rehabilitate people and put them out back into society with the tools they need to be successful: driver's license, resume, probably a job already, and a vehicle. And not only is that's a good thing to do, but we don't need all this recidivism, and they have a much better recidivism rate or record with their facilities. I really want to encourage you all to look and see what we can do to take better advantage of these facilities, because several have closed down simply because they weren't receiving enough inmates. And the one that we toured has 20 available beds. So I would like to see these used more effectively. Thank you. That wasn't a question, it was a statement.
Okay, thank you, Representative Brown. Just one question to each of you, and Senator King, would you agree, all of you, that one of the main reasons we have had such a large number of people that have had to be put in prison is because of the breakdown of the family and the breakdown of homes all over the state, where there's no dads at home, sometimes there's no moms at home, sometimes they're drug addicts, these kids many times, and I read the other day where Alabama and a lot of other states base their prison, whether they're going to build one, 15 years in advance, based on whether on third grade reading score. So if a child can't read by the time he's in the third grade, he has a much greater potential of winding up in a prison. Do you agree with that? What do you think the home life plays in a lot of these people who are being arrested, especially the nonviolent.
I am certain there is some truth to everything that you said in that statement. I don't know precisely everything that is happening in the home life. I know one of my goals, and one of the goals for everybody sitting up here at this table that is tied to the Department of Corrections is family reunification, is breaking sort of those generational issues that continue to lead to incarceration and the events that lead folks back into our custody. I wish I'd brought my researcher, because she could probably answer that much more articulately than I am able to. But sure, Senator Stubblefield, I absolutely think that home life and things that happen in your environment and access to services and all sorts of things probably play a significant role in the trajectory of our youth and young adults and everything else.
Thank you. Senator King, you have a question?
Yes, I think, Mr. Watson, when did you get appointed to the board? What year?
In 2020.
2020? Okay, and then Mr. Magnus, I think he is probably the only one here that predates me. One thing I do with this handout is somebody that's been around a while. You know, this problem has been created by governors and previous legislators not budgeting enough money for corrections. That's just it. You guys have taken a lot of heat that you should have never happened. You know, and I've been through this. If you look back to 2011, when Governor Beebe got in financial trouble, he comes up with the Public Protection Act, which actually was going to reduce crime. Recidivism never happened, and everybody almost voted. A few of us said, no, this is not going to happen. It just kept leading people out. You can see in your handout, the legislators, that violent crime immediately starts going back up. It wasn't the corrections people's fault, okay? It's everything that you do takes money, and if you have a significant crisis, which we have high crime, high overcrowding, and high incarceration rate, we've got a triple-headed monster. It's going to take a big amount of money to be. You can see after that bill, through these next things, prison population going over through the years, and I was down there. Then you have Jeremy Hutchison come in 2015. You know, so many of these legislators get out there and beat. You can see the 2015 bill was going to reduce crime, reduce recidivism. It got worse because there was no significant amount of money. It's just all show. You can see FBI statistics show that we're one of the worst in the nation in violent crime. You can look at our budgeting history of where Medicaid goes. If you go to the big figure, and I'm getting to my question, when I came in 2006, if you look at every percentage we get, public safety got 1.9% of the budget, state police. Education got 44.9. Corrections got 8% of the budget. That's it, 8 cents of every dollar went to corrections. Medicaid got 24%, higher ed got 16%, and county turnback dollars, which is one of the biggest detriments that's happened in our county turnback, giving our judges and mayors more money to work with in turnback, was 4.9%. Fast forward through all these years, the last budget that went through in 2023, state police, Department of Public Safety got 1.8%. Now they may have got an increase because of the amount of money went up, but as a percentage, a lot of talking legislators actually gave less money as a percentage of the budget, which was actually a cut. But corrections stayed 8% of the budget. All the way through, corrections has been 8% of the budget. If you go back to the big thing, as I've advocated back even years ago, thank God we have video in the Senate now, had corrections, and Senator Hester is not here and continues to be beat up on you guys wrongly. If we would have increased corrections to 10% of the budget, which I have always advocated since Senator Hester came in, corrections would have received almost $1.5 billion more dollars. If we'd have moved it up from 8% to 10%, they would have received almost $1.5 billion dollars. If you would have had $1.5 billion more dollars, we wouldn't be talking about here in this situation. And that's why when you're looking at the future years, if we don't increase the budget back to 10% of the budget in corrections, we're never gonna get out of this any more than you're gonna get to Little Rock by driving to Kansas City. If it's not a significant part of the budget that keeps getting corrected, we're never gonna get out of this. So I guess my question to you is, in looking at the future years, you're still gonna be operating off 8% of the budget this time. You're actually underfunded by millions, hundreds of millions. I mean, this whole thing with McKinsey, if we have these consultants give these horrible results, the only thing they're good at is hiring lobbyists and then hiring legislators later. But, you know, we have this thing of the increase in pay, which I'm for, but yet, how are you going to absorb that in the budget? How, Chairman Magnus and the directors here, how are you going to pay for that in the budget in the increase in salaries? Have we been overpaying you?
No, sir.
No. Our staff has surely not been overpaid at all. In fact, now that we have the increase, you know, we were, unfortunately, and I can give you, you know, y'all all have the time. I've been on the board for 26 years. Y'all don't have the time for me to tell you about the needs or what it takes for Dexter could do what it takes for staff to run a prison. And you know, if you have a problem in a barracks, we were operating a year ago, prisons was 60% short of staff. 60%. And what that means sometimes and Dexter's more than welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but I probably would say that we had sometimes one staff member for 200 inmates. Would that be a true statement?
Yes, sir,
Payne?
that's correct.
That's dangerous, because if they have a problem, they have to go to that problem. That leaves 200 inmates by nobody watching them.
And the question I want to be, and I'll email it to you, it's a little more detailed question about where are you going to come up with the budget to absorb how many ever millions it's going to cost the extra, because then you're either going to be taking it from somewhere else, or conceivably we've been giving you too much money, which I know that's not the case, or we're going to be eventually robbing these one-time funds, which is fiscally responsible on the performance fund to pay for ongoing operations. Now on the prison part, and I'll turn it over to some other question, my biggest thing is, as we've talked about, and I came to the board, 2/3 of the inmates come from 8 counties. 4 counties, Pulaski, Benton, Washington, Sebastian, are contributing half the inmates. You know, if you're looking, and no one does anymore, because I said the budget, if we increase the budget 1% to corrections or even 2%, we wouldn't even be here today. The thing about looking at 5 years down the road, 50 years down the road, when you're looking at a facility, and I know this is mostly Joe Porfiry, unfortunately, has driven this point to this, and now everybody's having to deal with it. But if you look at it, it's just common sense. It's just so unbelievably common sense to look at if you're building a facility for 1,000 people, 300 employees, or 3,800, that you would look for a location where you already know you already concretely have a water source, that you're not even going to have to hook onto another water source. Because if you look at the 50-year outlay of having to pay a water bill and a sewer bill for 50 years, versus if you have some type of spring or some type of underground water source that you're getting. It's like so astronomical of that. You look at the road structure that's going to happen. 96, you go in there, I drove it the other day. There's grass growing up in the roads. We're going to have to spend, so looking at this site location, I have never been an envy in this thing. It's a site location, there's no sense spending $150 million or $200 million, Fort Smith said $250 million, and take so many years to have to revamp their system. So my thing is in this whole situation is, this whole thing has just never got off the ground, never made sense in the first place, never can add up. I can't even get Veneer that we're paying this California company to do stuff. They won't even return phone calls or ask. They'll take our people's tax dollars, but they refuse to meet with me in Stubblefield. Why are we continuing to not look at the 50-year cost of what it's going to cost if you have to hook onto another water system? Now, if you drill down and get a big spring, yeah, okay, that's going to save taxpayer money. But why have we not got an actual detailed cost of looking at 50 years of what water bills are going to cost us? Bentonville raised their water rates, Eureka's doubling their water rates. You start looking at this, it is so common sense to look at a location that you can hit a spring without a doubt where you can purchase property. Why have we not done any of that? I know Porphyry is, but what is the confusion between Porphyry driving this and you guys, I guess, in the whole thing? And why are we not looking at the 50-year cost with everything?
Okay, what was your last?
Well, why are we not looking at the 50-year cost of the water situation, the road situation? I mean, if you could find this location with its own water source. I mean, Johnny Morris, Bass Pro bought Dog Patch up there. He's trying to get hooked with the local water association. He's smart enough to know not to buy a location that he was going to have to go 30 miles to pipe into a community water system and pay a bill. So why was this, and why are we not looking at what is the cost of 50 years out of the price? I don't want to figure, because Porphyry's not going to answer, Veneer's not going to answer. What is the cost estimated to taxpayers that it's going to cost if you have to hook onto a water system of paying a water and sewer bill for 50 years? And what is the relationship between the board and Porphyry and this whole situation? How much is Porphyry driving this? How much is the board driving this? I just want to be clear.
I don't know how to answer that. The board has a constitutional duty to run, to manage and operate the prisons. We've been requesting more beds for several years, and this is one of the few opportunities we've had to be able to consider a new facility. And so that's all I know how to answer that question. I do want to go back to, I did get my numbers that y'all had asked about violent and nonviolent. It's 40, in 24, it was 49.3 points percent violent versus nonviolent. So there was, 51% nonviolent, 49%. And you can look at the numbers, it changes every year. I got the one year it was 51% violent, next year 50. It changes every year, but I have to be glad to send this to the chair and y'all can share it. But I wanted to answer that question. There's one other thing I want to bring up since Ms. Brown, Representative Brown brought up the centers, the reentry centers. We've closed centers because they weren't treating the inmates correctly. They were taking advantage of the inmates and their work. In other words, they were taking them out in public work and getting money for it and then not paying the inmates. Okay? That's one instance. We've also had to close some down because they weren't, their food was outdated that they were serving the clients that were there. But with that said, the centers, the reentry centers are important, but it's also, it's a budget constraint as well as an inmate constraint. As I think you left before the complete testimony was done the other day, and it was never said all the time during the testimony, reentry people have to be approved by the parole board. We can send them 10 names and they may only okay 5. So that's, and I don't think it should change, because I'm not trying to say that's a bottleneck that shouldn't be, but that was not told by Mr. Bell and didn't come out in the testimony till late in the day. But there's another factor that when Senator King talks about funding, if anybody knows about drug courts that we have throughout the state, they are effective. They do a good job. There's nothing magical about it. It's just that we limit how many, instead of a probation officer having 100 clients, that drug court officer may only have 15. So he stays on top of them more, he goes visit more. It's all about supervision. We don't have the money, we don't have the staff or the funding to say double probation officers. Probation for a lot of people does work, but you have to monitor them. You have to supervise them, and so it's. I know y'all probably don't want to hear that from somebody like me, always asking, because we always seem to ask for more money, but we do have a need and to for more funding for certain spots like reentry beds, like more probation officers. But again, when they fail, you have to have a place to put them. You have to.
Mr. Chair, okay, so you're not answering my question. You're going to get emails from me about what is the relationship, Ms. Wallace, Ms. Veneer. They won't answer questions. They won't even do anything, okay? And Mr. Porfiry, because Chairman Magnus is 1,000% correct. And what I've said for years is that the legislature, previous governors, and even today, you're getting underfunded because everything you do takes money. But I'm trying to look at and what is the best situation for the taxpayers long term. The best situation ultimately for at least water is to find your own water, find their own water source. That didn't even happen in the purchase of this property. This is going to be $1 billion+. You add up over 50 years what the extra cost of paying a water and sewer bill is going to be. It's going to be astronomical if the right thing had been done is to find a water source that wouldn't have cost the taxpayers right off the bat. I mean, I worked in the construction business, in the poultry business, but if the legislatures keep underfunding corrections, we will never get out of this. But so there's no answer on Veneer and Mr. Porfiry and the relationships. Mr. Wallace, do you have anything to say about Veneer, Porfiry, and their involvement in this?
So I will say that I think in response to the water source, the process as I understand it, I wasn't around whenever we procured land and did all of the things with the last.
You were not involved in the procurement of the land, the purchase, or any of that part till it happened, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So you were kept in the dark like everybody else until Mr. Porfiry basically seems to be the one pulled the trigger.
Well, I don't know what the process was for the selection and all of the things that led up to that. But what I do understand to be factual is that everything that we could do before we purchased the land was done in terms of checking things out. For us, in determining where the water source goes, I don't know the answer at this point. I think all options are on the table. I think we are limited in how much we can do because we do not yet have our architect and engineering contract in place. So in terms of planning things out and moving forward on what a plan and what it would cost to put water in place for this specific facility or anywhere else that we were going to build a prison. A crucial step with that is securing the contract for the architect and engineer, and we have not yet moved forward with that. And I think that we are doing as much as we can right now. So we know we have some different options. Mr. Magnus, I think, talked about some of those earlier, but
those things should have been done with project. This facility we're in, any business, whether we're building chicken houses or construction that's going to kind of conceivably 3,800 people, that should have been figured out way before the purchase of the land. And that wasn't your thing, but that's where it goes. But you're still not, and I'm going to email you because we need to move on. But the other thing is too, I want to talk about DEI, woke, all this. Sure. If you look at Veneer, they're DEI and woke. And they're turning over $1 billion+ project to them. You look at the other companies involved. I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on about being against woke and DEI and a professor, or even putting things on our county that happened this last time. So I guess the question is, once again, it's still not answered. Where is this communication with Porfiry and Veneer? It's not answered. A simple question is to figure out what is going to be the 10-year cost to pay a water and sewer bill for what you're conceivably doing. So I'll just email you the question.
okay.
Senator King, if I might add a little bit, and this kind of backs up what you've been saying. And I know from, watching criminal justice in Arkansas since the early 80s, we all probably remember, if you weren't there, you probably remember hearing about
Oh, I remember,
Tommy
yeah.
Robinson.
Yeah, Tom Robinson chained people
So
up on the fence,
The
yeah.
county jail backup goes back to 1981.
Yeah.
And facilities have been added, beds have been added, but the department hasn't kept up. I mean, the funding hasn't been there.
No, the legislature and previous governors have not kept up with their funding, to correct you.
I'm not trying to point my finger at
Well,
any
I get to
current
point
legislature.
fingers, and I'm good at that, so.
Okay.
Senator King,
But-
let Mr. Martin finish.
So go ahead.
But this has been around for 45 plus
Sure.
years. And, we make progress, and then as our population grows, and as, I think some of our prosecutors are more aggressive than others, and I'm from Sebastian County, I think percentage-wise, we probably send more people to Department of Corrections per capita than other counties. But I do want to throw in that as I got onto the board and got to learn more and more about what all's involved, the budget, the amount of resources we have and we utilize to try to, as we bring people in, turn them out so that they don't come back to prison. We're not as successful as we'd like to be. An interesting fact that gets overlooked, and the last statistic I saw was a few years ago, but Arkansas spends less per bed than any other prison in the United States.
And you guys are one of the most efficiently run for the amount of money and what you do. You are one of the top places in Arkansas. And that's why I don't like you guys that have been beat up on by legislators that you've got, if all these other agencies manage money like you guys did, it would be a lot state government situation.
Well, we don't have much choice. And
Yeah.
Senator Stubblefield, to your point earlier, the Board of Corrections and the department, we don't control who comes to us. We're sitting in the middle of the system. You have the prosecutors and the criminal justice system that sentences people, but we don't control who comes to us, which inmates come to us. We have them for the period of time that we have them. They either serve their sentence and they leave, or they're paroled. And a lot of them are paroled or let out a little bit early, depending on good behavior and how they were sentenced. The board itself and the department doesn't really control that. The parole board is independent and they control that. So we're kind of the monkey in the middle, if you will. And whatever budget we're given, we have to make do regardless of how many inmates come in.
And that's what I say, the budget, if we'd have been 10% of the budget, you guys would have got almost $1.5 billion more dollars. And I know some legislators don't like hearing that, but that's the reality, they've not been funded. But the other part is, Pulaski County is 13% of the population. They're contributing, I think, 21% of the inmates. If you look at the top 4 counties, they're contributing half the inmates where the population is. 4 counties contribute half our inmates. If we don't do things that's outside of your purview to control the crime in front of you. On Fox News the other night, there was a retired police captain in New York with the last incident said, you have to get more positive police presence. You can't do that with underfunding state police. As I said, and state police as a percentage was 1.9%. When I came in, it's 1.8%. So it's just going to take a huge amount of money, and that didn't happen this session.
All right, Senator
But
King.
anyway, I know I was on.
All right, Ms. Ware, I'm gonna let you speak. I know you're here to testify. You've been waiting patiently, but I want you to understand something. I've been here 16 years, and I sit on the Judiciary Committee, City County Local, I've chaired that for many years. There's none of us in this room that does not believe we need more prison space. I think every legislator here and every person in Arkansas, even those in the Charleston area, believe that we need more. But the way this whole thing was dropped on us when no one was notified, not even the representatives from that area were notified until the day after the land was purchased. That is not the way our government works. We are I've always looked at legislators as being like deacons. We're the servants. We work for the people. How can we do that if we're not even notified ahead of time about $1 billion project? This is totally wrong, the way this whole thing was kept a secret for so long. and out of the public eye, especially those residents. I have sit there for years, peer and review, and watch hundreds of millions of Arkansas taxpayers' dollars being wasted. I've watched one $90 million contract that went to DHS for software from California. None of it would work. Nobody made any effort to get that money back. We lost $90 million. And then I've watched dozens of contracts come through that were paying $50 million, $100 million to a company who had been doing this service for 10 years, had no complaints. They've been doing a good job. But all of a sudden, someone recommends somebody for $200 million to do the exact same thing, and that gets approved. It's just a roundabout, and I don't know how to solve it, but I do know that I will not sit by as a senator from that area and watch companies like Veneer take Arkansas taxpayer money and fly first class and take up suites in the residence when they come here and charge alcohol to the state of Arkansas. I will not sit by and let that happen. So if you could explain to us how the people, why they weren't given a period of public input. I mean, we've always had public input. Anytime there's a project that takes place, a big project in the state of Arkansas, the legislative council always gives those people in that area an opportunity to put their advice, give their advice, put some input, how it's going to affect their life. Because what you do, what you're going to do here is not going to affect most of you. It's going to affect the lives of the people that's lived on that mountain for 150 years. But it's not going to affect you. And you're never going to find staffing. Listen, I've went into staffing. You're never going to find in the staff that prison. Are we still at 60% females, Dexter?
No, sir. No, sir. That number is close to the 50%.
So we're 50% female guards, 50% male.
Yes, sir. It's
So you
approximate
got
number.
Female guards taking care of men in prison.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Ware, you have the mic.
I appreciate that. Thank you. My name is Wendy Wear. I'm a Senior Vice President of CGL Justice Services Division, and I am the Director of the Research, Analysis, and Forecasting Unit. Prior to joining CGL about a year ago, I was the President of JFA Associates, who has provided forecasting, research, analysis to the Department of Corrections for the past 30 years. So I have been involved, I'm sure we've met before, as I have appeared before your committee many times. And what I've come here today to do and have been asked to do, so when we do the forecast, we do it every year. We look at emerging trends, usually over the last 2 to 3 years. So we sort of track what's happening in terms of sentencing, time served, what kind of offenders are coming to prison, and we use that to build a simulation model that produces a forecast of how many beds are needed. What I've been asked to do today is really not just focus on the last 3 to 5 years, but use some of our work over the last 15, 20 years and put it together for you all in a long-term trend and really show how we got to where we are. So you'll see that we've put in some of the legislative changes as they've occurred, going back to 2010, 2005, so you can see how those affected the prison population. I want to make a couple of disclaimers. So when we analyze, well, first of all, a little bit more about me. I have spent the past 30 years doing exclusive criminal justice and corrections research in my entire career. I have done over 500 forecasts for all 50 states and over 300 jail institutions. So I've done a lot of forecasts. I am always up on trends in the rest of the country, in states and locals. So I'm going to try to put a little context into where Arkansas is with the rest of the country. A couple of disclaimers. Oh, let's see if I can move down. Okay, yeah. I know this is hard to read, but everyone at the table here has been provided the slides. 2 disclaimers I want to make before I go into some of the numbers about how we do our work. First of all, I know there's a lot of issues and talk about the difference between Department of Corrections inmates in county jail versus prisons. When we do our forecast, we look at what's called the total jurisdictional population. So it's regardless of where they're housed. It is meant to analyze the total need to house these inmates. So we don't look at where they're housed, we just look at the fact that they are under the responsibility of the Department of Corrections. And the second disclaimer that I like to give when I talk about trends and when we talk about how we do our forecast is that I do not know what the capacity is of the Department of Corrections, and I never know, because I don't want it to influence what we're putting out as a product, which is what you need. Okay? If nothing else changes, if you stay on your trajectory, this is what you're going to need. Okay? Those disclaimers out of the way, I'm going to go through basically how the prison population is determined in terms of the factors that influence it. The first one is admissions into the Department of Corrections. So what's on this chart here and what you have in front of you, in the bars, blue is blue is female, red is male. This is the total intake into the Department of Corrections every year since 2010. And we've added these lines here to really illustrate big legislative changes as they've occurred. As you see, between 2010 and 2011, we had Act 570, and that did bring admissions to prison down. In 2013, there was an incident, and what followed was a parole violator zero tolerance policy. So you see admissions up, tick up, tick up, tick up, through 2019 when we had COVID. COVID did bring the number of inmates coming into prison down, delays in court processing, and a need to just lower the population for safety standards. But since then, you see admissions to prison are inking back up to where they were. Okay, this is pretty standard. The COVID influence is pretty standard with what's been happening in the rest of the country. But I want to point out, again, we're focusing on long-term trends. So I'm not just chasing what happened last year, what happens this year. If we go back to 2010, the total number of admissions to prison has grown by an average of 2.4% per year. So that is every year, we average it out, about 2.5% per year. More individuals are coming into prison. That is a combination of new court commitments straight from court, probation violators from court, and parole violators with new charges. Okay. So how does that translate into the prison population? Who is there today? Who is there every day that we've sort of marked in those years? You can see we've put those policy lines on as well, and they pretty much match what we saw with admissions. We saw a decrease in the population post Act 570. We saw a pretty substantial one-year jump with the zero tolerance for parole violators. And then since COVID, I mean, there was a small decrease in 2020 with COVID. I will say that this is smaller than what we saw in some other states around the country. We saw some really big decreases in some jurisdictions. But since then, you have been growing. Since COVID, if we go from 2021 on, you are growing an average of 5% per year. Okay? Surprisingly, that does not put you at the top of the United States. You are currently 17th in prison population growth in the last 2 years. Some of the highest states are Colorado, Mississippi, Montana, Tennessee, and Minnesota, each growing between 10 and 8% per year. Okay? Just putting this a different way. So this is, again, that jurisdictional prison population, and this is the growth year in year. So you can see big decreases post Act 570, a big jump of almost 18% with that parole violator policy, a big decrease in COVID, but you're in the plus side. you're always on the plus side. If we average all of this out, the prison population since 2010 has grown an average of just under 2% per year. Okay? So I'm going to talk about the projection, and I'm also going to put those policy lines on as well. We've taken this all the way back to 2005. So we get basically a 30-year picture of where the population has been and where it's going to go. The bars on the chart represent the end of year jurisdictional population, so that's the actual count. The line chart reflects our forecast for those years stacked up, and then from 2025 on is the future projected forecast. The slides following this, I'm going to go into what has driven these ups and downs and what is going to continue to drive the future growth. But really, the forecast has done fairly well in terms of projecting what happens in the population. Obviously, COVID, we over forecasted that year. There's definitely, it's not perfect, but it matches fairly closely with what's happening. Really, the kind of key takeaway here, if we look at the historical growth from 2005 to 2024, it's right at that 2.1%. The projected growth is 2%. Okay, so it's really, and this is what I wanted to stress today, that there's a lot of talk about different governors and different policies. This is sort of your long 30-year trend, okay, and it's pretty consistent. Okay, I'm going to, it is important to note where you're going, and by 2035, the number's not up there, but you're just shy of 26,000. There are two lines there. One is with the Protect Arkansas Act and one without it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that act as we go through it and some potential changes with that. Okay, so why is the population continuing to increase? One of the things, so it's not just intake, it's how long they're going to serve once they come in, okay? Admissions times length of stay is always going to equal your population. And when you talk about what's driving the prison population, it's one of those two things. It's either how many are coming in multiplied by how long they're going to serve. And so what we've tried to do here is really demonstrate the growth in the total sentence to serve for inmates who are coming in the front door. These are broken down by seriousness levels that coincide with the sentencing guidelines. These are how inmates are sentenced in the state of Arkansas. I also want to note seriousness levels 1 and 2 are lowest, seriousness level 10 is highest. I want to note that in that average sentence in months column, that is their total sentence to serve. And I think it's important to note that the overwhelming majority of offenders in the Department of Corrections have more than one sentence they are serving, okay? So this is the maximum concurrent running sentence. I think the last time we checked a few years ago, it's an average of 2.5 for everyone in the Department of Corrections. So they're not just in for one theft, one felony, they can have underlying charges, okay? The underlying sentences to serve, okay? But this is their total sentence combined with their most serious seriousness level. Now, as you see, we have 2019 and 2023 there, and what's really important here is that every single seriousness level total average sentence has gone up in the past 4 years, okay? So the amount of time to be served in the Department of Corrections is going up consistently, okay? We've just thrown a percent there, ranging from 1%, sort of your smallest group, in level 7, 6% increase in level 8, going from serving 161 months to 191, okay? So it's more time on the back end, and when you reach 240 months, that's 20 years, okay? I want to talk about the other side of admissions, which are parole violators returned with a new charge. I did this presentation on Monday, And there was a question about parole violator technicals and where are those in these numbers. They are in the blue bars, which represent parole violators, but it's a very small portion of parole violators coming back. Virtually all of the parole violators coming back to the Department of Corrections also have a new charge, okay? You can see that the percentage of parole violators coming back in that admission stream really shot up in 2013 with the zero tolerance policy, and you're hovering at about 50% of commitments are parole violators with a new charge. I point this out because with those longer sentences, when they are released to supervision, they have that time hanging over them on supervision. So when they go out and commit another charge, they get additional time on that charge. Okay, so you're sort of furthering the more time in prison. Okay, this is a fairly high percentage of parole violators. In other jurisdictions, we really see it around 30–35%. Some of that is a factor of long terms that they have to serve on parole because they have those longer sentences. So it's almost a never-ending cycle. Okay, the other types of intake and increased sentences that I want to highlight are 70%ers. So prior to the Protect Arkansas Act, there was a similar list of crimes that were required to serve 70% of their sentence. So we've gone back almost 10 years with this, and you see that the number of individuals committed with a 70% offense has only grown small, just a little bit, 314 to 330. The average time those offenders have to serve has gone up, as you see. And then this end of year population for those 70%ers is really what's driving the prison population. If you look in 2014, there was only about 3,000. Now there's just under 4,100. In 2014, 70%ers serving like today in prisons was 17%. In 2023, it's 22%. So there's a stacking effect going on with these longer sentences, that they're going to continually take up more and more proportion of the prison population and cause it to grow. The Protect Arkansas Act, so we haven't seen anyone come to prison with these charges yet because it's new. They have to go through the legal system. We did do, as part of our work, we do provide legislative impact assessments for the department. We estimated that between 1,500 and 2,000 additional beds would be needed through 2040. So even further than that 2035 because they're going to stack up. They're already serving 7 to 10 years. To serve even longer, it's going to take longer. I do want to, this is one of the things, so we do this work every year. As I said, we track the trends, we look at our estimated impacts and revise them. Other states that have passed this sort of legislation, the impact and how it's going to fall out is highly dependent on the sentences that are then imposed by the judges for those crimes. We also, in jurisdictions and states that have done this, we see changes to plea agreements where offenders are more willing to plead to a charge that is not an 85% or 100% charge. So that is, and future crime and clearance rates are in that. So it's part of our work. It's an estimate at this point that we've built in, as I showed you with those two lines, but we're going to keep looking at it and we're going to keep tracking it. That is one of the things that when we do forecasts and we do try to inform about future needs is when a piece of legislation is going to affect the prison population, it needs to be evaluated as to how it's implemented and how it plays out. Okay. Two more slides. I want to talk about the release mechanism. So at this point, we've talked about how they come in, are they a violator or not, what is their imposed sentence to serve, and now I'm going to talk about the release mechanism. So prior to 2023, there was something called EPA release that released inmates between 90 days and a few 1 year earlier than their transfer eligibility date. Their transfer eligibility date is what is stipulated in the sentencing guidelines to their earliest possible release. okay? Not the 70%ers, just the average inmate not under any other legislation. In March of 2023, the governor of Arkansas eliminated EPA releases so that you see that in prior years, between 2,000 and 2,500 inmates were released early, some as early as a day, again, some at that 90-day mark. It was a range, but now that is 0. So you do have about 2,000 people serving. It's an average of about 3 months longer than they did. Okay, that has contributed to your growth the last 2 years. Aside from EPA, and aside, there's the transfer eligibility date that I mentioned, which is the earliest time an inmate can be released. So we take a look at inmates released, how they're released, and at what time frame. And so we come up with a percentage of how many are released on time or held over. Prior to, if you see 2023, that blue bar is quite large, and 83% of released inmates at this point are staying beyond that transfer eligibility date, and they're staying an extra 10 months. Okay, so, and as you see, it's been creeping up. The number of time over has crept up from about 7 months to 10 months from where we are for the last 13 years, and then again that percentage. So that's a factor of the parole board, releasing them on time and then holding them before they're eventually released. Okay, I'm going to stop and take questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Representative Gonzalez has a question.
How many of those staying past their TE date are staying in county jails past the TE date?
I don't have that information. As I said, we're just sort of total jurisdictional, so I don't know how many are in county jails.
We watch the TE date. If we see anything, we try to get them in and get a process where they get to the parole board. There has to be a real short sentence for that to happen, but I didn't say it didn't happen, but if we know the TE date is on that inmate's coming, we try to get him into the system and make sure he's processed where he can go to the parole board.
Okay, thank you. Representative Roddy, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your presentation. I saw it on Monday when you presented it in Little Rock, and I have to say it's very alarming. My question is for Board Member Watson. So you said a couple of weeks ago publicly that you don't think the state needs 3,000 prison beds. But looking at this presentation where we're at today with 19,400 and looking at where the projection is going to take us in 10 years to 25,173, that's a delta of over 5,700 beds. Can you please help me understand, do you disagree with these projections, or do you have a different set of math that we're not seeing?
No, I think most of my focus of the letter that I sent to the committee was about the fastest way we could add beds. I didn't refute or state we didn't need 3,000. I don't think we do today. We're going to in the very near future, and that's going to grow. But the point of my communication was to try to focus on bringing the beds in that we can bring online the fastest, possibly through community corrections, through reentry, through adding the 500 beds. The A&E work had already been done up at Calico Rock, or North Central. But no, there's no doubt we're going to need more beds. Okay. The only thing that could change that would be for us to change our criminal laws so that our sentences are less harsh.
Well, your response is interesting because the quote that you gave to Arkansas Advocate was, quote, "Our needs don't support a 3,000 bed facility when the county jail backup is 1,600. So that directly conflicts with what you said publicly just a couple of weeks ago.
Today, we do not need 3,000 beds. That was my point.
But we can't build a prison today. As you know, it takes, there's a long runway on that.
Sure.
So it's sort of pointless whether we need it today or not. The question that we should be asking is, are we going to need it in 3 years? Are we going to need it in 5 years? Are we going to need it in 10 years? I mean, you know that.
But we also need to be talking about what kind of beds we need. There's prison beds, and then there's, the community corrections facilities. There are other ways to get to what we need and address what the department needs. And just throwing a 3,000 bed facility isn't necessarily what the department needs today, if you could make one fall out of the sky.
So your contention is, out of over 5,700 projected additional prisoners we're going to have over the next 10 years, that we're not going to need 3,000 state prison beds?
Eventually we will. Yeah, and that's my idea for any new prison that we build would be that it be designed with the idea that initially it would be a 1,000 bed facility, and then as we could get funding, and if the trends continue, we could add another wing of 1,000 and then another, just like you see done at schools and nursing homes and other facilities that house large numbers of people.
Okay, well, that's not what you said in the paper, so I appreciate you clarifying.
All right. Lindsay, let me ask you one question. The Protect Arkansas Protected Act, is that act going to increase or decrease the number of incarcerations in Arkansas, or the rate of recidivism? How's it going to play into the number of people we incarcerate?
So
is it going to increase that number?
Yes, Ms. Ware prepared the impact assessment for that bill whenever it was proposed, and I think she had a little bit of information on the slides in there. Yeah, if you want to, I'd love to let Wendy specifically answer.
Yeah, it is projected to increase the prison population 1,500 to 2,000. Once fully phased in and stacked up, but that's 2040 to 2045.
So really, passing the Protect Act wasn't really a strong deterrent to preventing crime.
Not currently.
Not currently? There's an old saying, you can kill a fly with a sledgehammer, and it's not about the fly, it's about those flies watching. We don't have a real deterrent, even with this Protect Act, according to what you're saying.
Mr. Chair, and to the committee, I want to say, Protect Arkansas has some provisions for repeat offenders. And repeat offenders is what is really hurting the county. It's hurting the county jails. We got in people coming to us for the 4th time, 6th time. And it shows on her graph. That's a new commitment. It's not that because he's been there. So I'm in more of a belief that because of the repeat offenders getting more time, that eventually, because they're going to do the time anyway. It's just whether they're going to do it at once or whether they're going to do it, in installment plan. So I'm in the belief that because of the provisions of Protect Arkansas to have some kind of effect on repeat offenders, I think it will be a deterrent. I'm the type of person that not only visit with the staff, but also visit with inmates. And inmates will tell you, basically, 7 years breaks, runs a man, 12 years breaks the man. So what they're trying to say is 7 years at one time, guess what? They're ready to go home. I didn't say everybody, but a large majority of them. A lot of times what we do, or the courts do, because of the way the sentencing is and the years, a 10-year sentence, and they're going home in 2 years. They're not doing the 10 years. But if they, before Protect Arkansas, they had many opportunities of that 10 years. This time, they're not going to have that opportunity. That's what she's actually saying. It's going to increase the beds, but I'm not real sure at some point it's not going to decrease the growth, because it's not going to be the same guy coming back 4 or 5 times, because he's already going to be there. He's not going to be out doing more crimes. And I think that a lot of the sheriffs that are testifying next will tell you that they are very glad the Protect Arkansas addressed the repeat offenders, and it does.
And
Can you tell me, Benny, it's been a long time, so, well, Governor Hutchinson carried out some death executions, but how many do we have on death row now, Dexter?
25.
We only have 5 on death
20,
row?
25.
25 people on death row. Why are there, let me tell you, they already appealed, their appeals run out?
I'm not certain what the number is, Mr. Chairman, but I have my chief counsel here if you have any specific questions. I think the specific holdup has been that we have not been able to obtain any of the legal execution drugs.
Well, I understand that, that's what we've been working on it for a long time, but we have other means of execution besides those lethal drugs. We passed a nitrogen bill this year that was now, I understand, is being held up in court, which will always be the case when you have liberal judges around. But there are people sitting down there who have committed multiple murder and have been sitting there for 20 years. That's too long. That's too long for the Arkansas taxpayers to be paying for after they have killed whole families. You understand what I'm saying? Back close down where I live, there was a guy named Judge Parker. He cleaned up a lot of that, but he did it swiftly. And let me bring up one more thing to the committee here. And you may not be aware of this. During the votes, during that last session, during the votes of the prison appropriation, we had a couple of cases of extortion to sitting senators who I talked to. We will not tolerate that. Extortion is a felony. When someone comes in and threatens a senator of depriving him of tax dollars and grant money for his district, if he doesn't vote a certain way, that won't be tolerated. And I talked to one of those individuals myself, and it happened. I'm not going to name any names, but I just want you to know right now, that kind of stuff is in Washington. If we're going to do it here, let's just put D.C. over the doors of the state capital of Arkansas. Because that's wrong. We represent the people. We're not going to be extorted. So, any other questions?
I got a question.
Mr. Petty, you have a question? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this probably goes back to Ms. Wear, but talking about deterrent, and maybe the sheriffs will talk about this in the next session, but I have heard the statistic of about 40,000 unserved felony warrants that are currently not served because of a lack of prison space. Now that may not be a direct deterrent, but that does speak to unserved warrants and felony criminals on the streets because they haven't been served because of space. Do you or any of the others know about that statistic as far as unserved felony warrants?
It's outside our scope of work.
Okay. Maybe the sheriffs can talk about that then. So, Brian, do you?
I got it.
Oh, you got mine. Okay.
So to answer the question, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The incarceration rate, we have like the second or third highest incarceration rate. Embarrassing. That's not your issue. But, I mean, high incarceration rates obviously don't always equal lower crime. I mean, there is more issues that's going on with some of these counties that are not controlling the crime part on the front end because, as I say, the cost part of these repeat offenders that's not being focused on, not your fault, but once you arrest somebody, it costs money. then you incarcerate them till the jail date, or they bond out, then they have a court date, that costs money. If they have a public defender, they cost money. So every time we keep having arrests, and if you look at, the guy on Fox News the other night said, more policing, and that's why we need to be on the proactive side, which is not your part. But the biggest thing I have is we need increased beds. I said that in 2017 when I filed the other bill, and I think Chairman Magnus remembers that. And I said at the time, we are not funding enough. And at that time, I tried to get Governor Hutchinson and the rest of the legislators, which we passed the bill out of the Senate, to take the Amazon tax, which was voluntarily being remitted. We would have had a dedicated revenue stream back then. We're going to have a dedicated revenue stream on the front end. So this high incarceration rate is going to automatically solve the grow over the crime rate. Is certainly not true. Okay. The second part is back to the cost, and I'm big on this thing of like once we get into this thing with these mega prisons, you start spending 50, 100 million, you're sunk. Utah was going to build 4,000 bed prison for 1.3 billion. They're not even close to that. Or Alabama, Utah never made it. They can't staff their mega prisons. It's 5 miles from Salt Lake City Airport. So, it's the bigger things of looking down the road. So the original figure we gave in 2013, and I knew this in 17 was never going to work, Senator Gilmore all gave and the governor, that we were going to build 3,000 beds for $456 million. That's $156,000 per bed. Never happened. Were any of you involved in those figures that came up that threw out those original figures to everybody and misled everybody? You were not involved in,
No.
Okay.
Absolutely
so that goes
not.
back to Fury again, that obviously somebody gave that figure. If you look at Utah and Alabama, or Utah, it's well over 300,000. If we build a 1,000-bed prison, like we were talking about, and you spend $800 million, that's $800,000 per bed. It's so economically not feasible, and we can't afford that. So that's why I'm big on like whatever decision we make has to be looked at. But none of you were involved in the process of giving those original figures of the 456 million, or consulted, talked about, or anything. That's correct.
If I may, just a little bit. So it was, I believe, during whenever Secretary Porfiry was still here with the department, and I believe he used a consultant to design what they called a program. I don't think there was ever actually any architectural, it was like a conceptualized budget, was my understanding of it.
Yeah.
That's what my understanding of it
That's
was.
a complete failure. And then he came up with later, I think, $5 million for a site prep on the consultant part that they came up with. If you look at Fort Smith, if you have to go get water from there, they said it's going to cost $250 million. If we have to revamp these systems to get water in this location, you're talking about spending so much money. That's why it's so important, and I'm trying to get to this and trying to get everybody to understand about why it's so early, is we have a site preparation. It's going to cost you $250 million for the site prep before you even build one cell. And you have one other spot that's $50 million. I mean, it's like, that's why it's so important to get all this right, and it's very hard when Veneer will not answer questions. Do you have any sway with Veneer? Are you guys paying Veneer, or where is this money coming? Because I feel like they need to meet with the people. Do you think they need to meet with us?
The contract is with the Board of Corrections, and isn't that correct,
Yes, sir.
Linda? That's
It's
what
with
I
the
think.
department, yes, sir.
So, I'll talk to Veneer again and try to make sure they meet with you and Senator Stubblefield. But one thing about construction of a prison, and I know Dexter's would be quick to answer this, it's the cost is the hardening of the beds. Whether it's going to be barracks, or whether it's going to be 2-man cells, 1-man cells, all that has a different, whether you just throw up a metal building and, a big one metal building and put people in there, it has a whole different cost. And I know that Mr. Payne, because of our population, how it's being different, he would love to have more 2-man cells. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's correct. We need more cells.
And that costs more money than building a prison with barracks. I want to make another statement. When y'all's talking about money, we've had increases in our budgets. And we're very appreciative of what we do get by the legislature and the governor. And also, we have to say that we also want to thank the governor for being a person that will consider giving us money for beds, because this system is not going to be able to stand very much longer if we don't get some beds. I was on the Board of Corrections when we topped 3,200 beds backed up in the county jail. They will never let that happen again, I don't think. I don't think the county sheriffs, they want to help with, us picking up a parolee or something to get him out of the community helps them. But there's a limit to how many they can hold. And there's a limit to how many we can hold because of federal requirements. The very next thing, and I'm gonna put this microphone up, I'll walk back in the audience. It was said a while ago, and I'm gonna say it again, because a lot of y'all don't hear it. The Board of Corrections, it was designed and made to manage and operate the prison system. State of Arkansas is in the top 5. Again, I'm going to refer to Dexter. How well it's operated, how clean it is, the whole gamut. We're in the top 5 in the nation. We run our prison system cheaper than any other state in the United States. In 2024, I believe, and 23, we were the cheapest in the United States. So if we're fortunate enough to get more money to build other prisons or to operate it, I think you'll see the same kind of reaction of trying to operate the beds as effectively as we can from the Board of Corrections.
So I understand that, but one thing, so Veneer is, Ms. Wallace, Mr.
Yes.
Payne, you're gonna make sure that Veneer meets with us. I mean, it's not fair they take our tax dollars and then they fly and try to do whatever they need to do. I mean, this thing that we're even paying them on some things to find out water, we've got plenty of, y'all been around a while, we got plenty of resources that they don't even need to be working us on. But, you know, if they're gonna cash our taxpayer dollars, they need to be meeting with the people and at least have enough character to do so. You're gonna double check and make sure that happens?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Wait a minute, we'll talk to him. Brian, I will talk to him, okay? The first time you requested it, you remember, I told you to hold off because I couldn't go with you. Remember?
I remember.
Okay, so let me talk to him.
Hey,
That's been a month ago.
hey,
Yeah.
that's enough. We're gonna shut it down right now. We're gonna move on to the Association of Arkansas Counties. I just want to tell you one thing. I've checked with a couple of companies in Arkansas. I mean, I know this Veneer is, building prisons is a niche. It's kind of, you know, not everybody does it. But Nagels have told me they could, Valines told me they could. There's been a number of companies in Arkansas that says they can. Now, I know some of you are going to disagree with that, but if we've got people in construction companies here in this state, why wouldn't we hire them to build $1 billion prison?
Because they have to bid on it. They did not bid. Baldwin didn't bid, which shocked me. But they have to bid on it. They have to be a part of the process. And
Have you already taken the bids from Veneer?
we had 3 people bid for what Veneer, what Veneer's called is an owner's rep. Out in the free world, it's called a construction manager. A project this size really does need what is called an owner's rep. And, but even when we had 3 applicants and Veneer was chosen by committee, when we went to get the construction company, we did not have the bidders that we thought we needed. But we did select Navajo's and what's it?
J.E. Dunn.
J.E. Dunn, which Navajo's is a big contractor in Arkansas, but J.E. Dunn's a big prison contractor in the United States, so.
Are these no backup bids where you get it? They're gonna, once they file a bid, they can't back up on it.
No, I can't back up.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate y'all coming. Thank you, Dick.
Yes. Hey, 23 is that death row number, 23.
23. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the Association of Arkansas Counties. With the impact of public safety. Those of you who are going to testify for the counties, come forward. Sorry about that, we're going with the sheriff.
Oh, boy.
Mr. Bradley, I think we'll just start with you. If you want to recognize yourself, tell us where
I was afraid you'd say that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing us to come speak today and having your meeting down here with the counties and keep everybody informed. I'm Scott Bradley. I'm the director of the Arkansas Sheriff's Association.
I'm Jay Cantrell, serve as the Washington County Sheriff. Thank you.
I'm Hobie Runyon, Sheriff of Sebastian County, my senator.
John Staley, Lonoke County.
Sean Holloway, Benton County Sheriff.
All right. Who wants to, you're recognized. Who wants to start off?
Thank you, Senator. Senators and reps, thank you for having us. We will try and keep ours a little bit shorter. You have honestly talked about a lot of the things we would have talked about. There are a couple of points that we would like to make briefly, I hope. We heard about where we're ranking on violent crime, which we all know that. You all know that, and it should, it's kind of appalling. Right now, things are going to change, but right now we're looking at some 10-year sentence. We're looking at 2 months. I'm sorry, 2 years. Less than 2 years on a 10-year sentence. And we know that's going to change, but that's where we're at right now. I think there's some ideas about who's in jail or prison and who's not. I can assure you there's not very many misdemeanors kept around this state because we can't keep them, which one of the other sheriffs will speak on. Since 2016, we've actually added, as sheriffs, over 3,000 beds. We've added those because we had to, and we end up taking that backlog. Today, we've got almost 1,900, which are state prisoners that committed state crimes that were convicted in court to state prison, and we're keeping them, and we don't have a choice. Never once have we ever had a choice about whether we would keep a state prisoner. A prison can shut down a wing. They can say, hey, we're not going to staff it. We can't staff it, so we're just not going to open it. We don't have that option. They're pushing all of that liability, and I mean the state. I'm not trying to pick on them. I think we definitely all want the same thing, but the bottom line is we've never been able to tell someone that we weren't going to keep that state prisoner, but yet we have increased liability, increased lawsuits. We have more inmate on inmate crime, more inmate on deputy crime, more deputy on inmate crime, more assaults. It goes on. And so we don't have a choice. So we're not a lot of sympathy on that end from your sheriffs, because we don't have a choice. I've been 25% down on deputies during COVID, and I was still keeping my state prisoners. I know that everything's going to change. This Protect Arkansas Act, it is going to change things. As the sheriffs, we feel like before we ever turn one shovel of dirt, whether it's it doesn't matter where it's at, we're going to be 5,000 down. There's no way we cannot be. So what happens then? Because we have bought that cart before we got a horse to pull it. We're going to have people backed up everywhere, and we're bursting at the seams right now. Just for my own county, we have Veterans Court, we have Drug Court, we have Mental Health Court, we have DWI Court, we have Hope Court, we have Rise Court, we have, did I say Mental Health Court? And we've got every alternative you can. We've got a PAC Act, which is peer recovery. We've got increased electronic monitoring. We've increased signature bonds on low-level felonies, which would have never happened. And I think that we have to have some pathway out of this. I think that as sheriffs, as law enforcement, there's about 7 steps that I think, Senator, you both alluded to. Whether we arrest someone, we hold them in jail, they go to trial, it all adds up. We don't have any control over that. We bring them in, we can arrest them. After that, we hold them until they go to trial, and we hold them until the state calls for them. We don't have any control over that, and I understand there's a lot of frustration, and we're right there at the forefront of it. I think that our message ultimately is that we need more bed space. We need more bed space. I mean, we're doing everything we can. In my county, what I told you I was doing, it's the same thing all over the state. Every one of those saves a couple beds, but we fill them right back up. And so, please, what I'm asking is, I don't care where it's at, how big it is, we need more bed space. And whether that's dollars or whether that's separate locations, I don't know what that is, but I'm asking you, please, the wheels they haven't come off yet of our criminal justice system, but they are wobbling really hard. I've been doing this for 35 years, and it scares me. And with that, I'll take questions and pass the mic.
Well, Mr. Runyon, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that a lot of counties are overcrowded, but I checked with some counties before I came. One county had 40 extra beds, another one had 15, another one had 25. There was a number of counties that had 50 beds or less, open beds. So they're not all full.
I think
all the counties are full, but I understand that a lot of them are.
a lot of them are. We transport people all over the state. I mean, we have a network of different counties that will take our state inmates. And we're very selective about who we can take, because if we send somebody that's going to be nothing but problems for them, they won't take anymore. But you're right. I mean, that's a valid point. But at the same time, these are state prisoners. They're state inmates that have committed crimes in the sovereign state of Arkansas. Sebastian County is not sovereign. I mean, they should be in prison.
But you look at the counties I called had passed sales tax, increased sales tax, built their own jails.
Some did, yes, sir, you're
Some
right.
did, and those are the ones that had the empty beds. The counties that, like Sebastian County, you're one of the higher rates as far as, putting people in jail.
Yes, sir.
Like Pulaski and Jefferson, some of the other counties. Those are the ones that Senator King was talking about. Because I called the ones that had passed countywide sales tax, and they had almost all of them had empty beds.
Did y'all try to pass the tax?
So
I think there's truth in that. At the same time, though, we're pushing back state inmates on the counties. We have no business doing it. I would love to have a tax, but at the same time, if we went in Sebastian County and said, hey, we need $80 million to build a new jail and they are not, that's not palatable to our citizens, not at all. And so is it our responsibility? Today I had 34% of my jail population are state inmates today. It's been up to 45, down to 26, but it varies.
They'll be full.
And they will be full. It's a matter of what they can handle. We take them every week. We're taking people all over the state.
how many deputies do you think you'll lose if a prison is built close to you and those guards are being paid $75,000 instead of what you're bringing?
If they were paid $75,000, we would probably lose a large percentage, not only of the jail staff, but of the law enforcement staff, because that's more than most of our people make.
Whatever county surrounded.
Sure, Franklin, Logan, Scott, no. That's valid.
Those people would be less safe because they have less law enforcement.
No, we would still get people, I think. There's a lot of people that don't want to work for the state I've got probably 6 former ADC employees that work for me because they chose to. They've done both.
Representative Brady, you have a question?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is for Mr. Bradley. At one point, I think we had a committee meeting and you presented a list of all of the counties that had either expanded their jails or built new jails in response to the state year after year sending their state inmate overflow down into the county jails. Do you have any updated numbers on how many that might be?
I could probably get those for you from one of the attorneys back here. I don't have it with me, but I can give you the numbers. How many beds do you think we've added? Did you say we added over?
Over 3,000 in 10
Well,
years.
We've added over
10 years.
3,000.
Across the state?
Yes, across the state, and I can get the breakdown if you'd like to have that. I'm sorry,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say that the counties who are not full will be. It's just a matter of time, and it does fluctuate some, and there are a few, and the sheriffs do try to manage their facilities depending on what's going on in their counties. So, but they will fill up eventually. We've got over 40,000 felony warrants out there right now that need to be served, could be served at any time, and over 143,000 misdemeanor warrants that we can't serve. Now, but I'll let John talk about that because we have no place to put them. That's a big part. And I'm sorry, sir.
That's okay. The other part of my question is it fair to say that when a county has to build a new jail or do a significant expansion of their jail, typically they have to raise a tax or levy a tax to do that? Is that fair?
That is very fair and absolutely true. Now, two of the sheriffs here that are sitting on this panel tried to run, raise the taxes, tried to run a bill. I'm gonna let Sean and Jay talk about that, which neither one of them passed.
So I just think it's ironic that you threw out that 3,000. You said over the last several years, the counties have collectively had to add 3,000 county jail beds because the state has neglected to add 3,000 state prison beds. And in many cases, they're having to raise taxes to do it. So I think as legislators, we just need to keep in mind that when we continue to kick the can down the road and don't figure out ways to solve problems, that what we're doing ends up raising taxes on a lot of our citizens.
Okay, you want to get a good segue for you, Sean.
Hello, once again, I'm Sheriff Holloway here in Benton County. A lot of stuff we've heard today, I don't want to go back over that, but there's something else you guys need to consider. We can have alternative programming and sentencing and all these other things, but right now we have a broken criminal justice system, and that starts at the bottom of district courts with misdemeanors. Right now, our misdemeanor system is totally broke. That is our first line to change a person's behavior so that they don't become a future felon. Right now, that is just not happening. This county, it's a large county, we have 4 district courts here. One of our courts on an average right now is having 15,000 plus failure to appears a year. So no one is coming to court because they know there is no consequence for an action. So this problem, no one ever talks about the misdemeanor justice. That is going to create a bigger problem for us in the future with felons. If we ever can add on to our jail, it's going to be full. But right now, I can't even hold misdemeanors. This backup, I don't know what the total backup of what you said, Scott, on the total.
Over 18,000.
1,800.
1,800, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 1,800.
1,800.
It's 1,800, 1,900 right now.
But anyway, that's something we need to consider. Like they were talking, we tried to pass a tax several years ago and it lost by 60%. Bad time to do it, but no one wants more taxes. We've tried to do every solution we can with all the alternatives. But at the end of the day, like my jail is one of the larger jails in the state. At any given point, I have 120 to about 80 state inmates waiting on a bed. I could use those beds right now for misdemeanor justice. I just can't do that. Judges will sentence people. What happens, and it's very expensive. I don't know what the cost for the taxpayers is. So if someone gets arrested, they don't show up for court. They get an FTA warrant. It gets entered to the system. All the people it takes to get into the system, they get with law enforcement again. They get rearrested. We bring them in. They get cited out and walked out, and they're given a new court date. And we do this over and over and over. It's not unusual for people in this county on a single charge to have 50 to 70 FTAs on that single charge. So there's got to be an expense. I don't know what it is, but it's not cheap, and it's bogging down our system.
It's today. It's today. It's 1895 today.
Yeah. Well, you're recognized, Randy.
Sheriff Holloway, thank you for your report. In speaking with one of our district judges, he mentioned that, you know, of course, if you have like a domestic abuse violations, a misdemeanor, they get arrested, they get booked, they get let out, right? He said that they would have to miss court up to 7 times before they could be jailed.
That would be correct, depending on the current situation with the jail. So we got to understand, from a constitutional standpoint, as a sheriff, I'm required to hold felons, not misdemeanors. So when one of my circuit court judges sends 10 people to the state prison, I've got to make 10 bed openings that misdemeanors are holding. That's why it's not working.
And it's also true, I think I've heard our Attorney General say that misdemeanors become felons over time.
Absolutely. I guarantee you every felon was a misdemeanor first.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Sheriff Staley from Lonoke County. I just want to thank everybody for having us and letting us talk today. I want to talk about misdemeanor justice. It's not happening in Arkansas. I want to talk about open beds. Our facility has 150 beds. When I took office in 2013, where there was space, I added beds. It was a 136 bed facility when it originated in 2011. I took office in 13. So in those open pods, we have some closed pods, we have some open barracks, 2 open barracks. So we added some bunk beds. Well, the problem is, I have 126 inmates today. My operational capacity is 130 because of staffing. And that comes back to funding. Because we do lose people to patrol, to state police, to other places. That's always going to happen. We've added jailers every year for the last 10 years. This year we'll add 4 more. We had an A+ rating from Standards just this last week. They love the way we're running our jail. We're very efficient. However, it cost us $85 a day to hold an inmate. Whether it's a misdemeanor, or it's a felon, whatever, $85 a day. The state, they're working hard, but they reimburse us $40 a day. We got that up from $28 a day under Governor Hutchinson. We're glad it went from 28 to 32 to 40, but it's still less than half of what it costs us to house them. So currently today, out of 126 inmates, 37 are committed to ADC, CCC, or other state facilities, and we work well with the department, ADC. We work well with getting them out of there. We're on the phone with them. We'll take them wherever they need to go. They just don't have space. So that's 30% of our facility right now that is waiting to go to ADC. We talk about the drug courts. People have to want help before they get it. Some plea out to our PAC program, which is Peers Achieving Collaborative Treatment. It's 74% effective. It's the best in the country right now at a 3-year mark of keeping those offenders who are, I think Mr. Magnus said it best, is they were doing life in prison on installments. And that's what they're doing. They're doing it over and over and over until they get locked up. If they're doing 2 months on a year for a 10-year sentence, that's a problem. They know math, prison math, better than we do. When they get arrested, they get a 10-year sentence, they come back and they tell us, I'll be out in 18 months. They know when they're getting out. That's changing with Protect Arkansas. We appreciate every one of you for that. That will be a deterrent. I've got guys right now that we used to catch with a gun, but they're a felon now, and they would get 5 years probation on felon possession of a firearm. It's 100% now. They're not doing it. You catch them, they might have some drugs, and they're getting rearrested, but they're not carrying those dangerous weapons. In Arkansas, we rank 4th in the country. There's only 3 others ahead of us in violent crime. That's per capita. When our county jails are full, misdemeanor, they're out. There's 143,000 misdemeanor warrants entered into the system today. That's half of what we have. The only misdemeanors we enter into ACIC are violent crimes such as domestic batteries, or those that are done through an affidavit process because you had somebody steal a misdemeanor amount of something from you. They get arrested. Criminal trespass is a big one. They're snooping around to steal stuff. Theft of property. Look, the ones in there for theft of property, they're not stealing just your lawnmower. They're the guys that are in a group going around hitting your houses, going into your cars. That is horrible when you know somebody's went into your stuff while you're asleep in your home, finds your keys because your kid left them in there, they take your car and leave the stolen car in your driveway. There's 10 different stolen cars that night we recovered. 5 in our county, one offense was 5 different stolen cars recovered. They just kept stealing them and dropping them off. Those dudes need to go to prison because they've been arrested 16 to 70 times. However, we have a program. That PAC program is working. It was funded through a grant. Hobie had a grant, 11 others started to mimic our program that was working, but those grants from DHS was pooled. There's got to be funding for that. We got to have space for that. You got to have those guys who want to plea out to that program. They think they're going to get out of jail. But in Arkansas, you can only do 120 days in the county jail on a felony. Now you can do up to 365 on a misdemeanor, Class A misdemeanor. But they get that 120 days, they do it in our jail. There's a program that goes on. They're getting education. That's what starts stopping recidivism. It starts there, but I don't have the room. I can only put so many in there. While we only have 126 inmates, that leaves us some beds open, right? With 150 beds, operational capacity is 130. We all go over capacity, don't get me wrong. But 150 beds, if we could hold those extra, they have to be felons because they can't house misdemeanors with felons. So there's a problem. I might have open beds, but I can only hold other state inmates. So if Hobie has some, I might take them. It doesn't make us money, but some of our courts thinks it does because there's money coming in. But there sure is a lot more going out. I'll end with that. The overcrowding situation has to be improved. With the county jails the counties adding 3,000 beds over the last 10 years, the counties are doing their part. We're passing the taxes. The people want to be saved. You're passing the legislation to protect them. You guys did that. Protect Arkansas. Thank you for everybody who supported that. But misdemeanor justice is not happening. We arrest them, try to make them bond out. We'll bring them from, we'll say, the end of our county, say it's a 20-mile ride. We'll take them to jail, try to make them bond out. At least they got to walk home, or somebody's got to come get them. That's what we're doing. It's a shell game. I'll take any questions. These guys will take any questions as well about what we're doing to reduce the recidivism.
First off, don't share this, the two of you I've met with personally. And your input was good because as I keep saying this, and people, why I'm so hardened on this issue is 2017, it was clear where this was going. It was crystal clear, and that's why I filed a bill that if you went to corrections 4 times, you served 80% of your sentence. And the Sheriff's Association at the time went neutral on it because Asa Hutchison didn't want to touch his budget. That's on video. So that's one of the frustrations I had in 17 was the people that kept saying it, that we needed more money. And I said at the time, we needed to take the Amazon tax, all this internet tax, which they estimated 30, 40 million at that time. Now it's probably over 100 million. That we could have done that. And we talk about raising taxes. If we get in a situation with these mega prisons and you get underwater, which this situation with the site prep, as I've said, is underwater right now. It makes no sense to spend one site location is going to cost you, as Fort Smith said, $250 million to supply the water out there. If you could build a site prep for $50 million, look how much extra money we have. And if we get in these situations like this other states, we're going to be raising taxes later on to try to fund it. We're going to be 6, 7 years down the road, and if you're spending $800 million on a 1,000-bed jail because of the site prep and the sheer incompetence that we've seen, I'm just telling you, we're underwater. We also need the population shift in Arkansas. 8 counties make up half the population. Benton, Washington, Sebastian County, you're contributing 1 out of every 4 inmates to the incarceration rate. It's significant. So it's going to take money. And the other part is my brother's on the corner court. And I have long advocated is I went into the budget and said, you know what, when I came in, county turnback dollars, and we understand that we send our, unfortunately, we send it to Little Rock and then they deal back out. Well, they have been underfunding our county turnback and city turnback dollars to help create it. If we were at the same percentage as I keep advocating the budget, and that's where these guys are prioritizing money going more to these other programs in county turnback. So if we were at the same percentage when I came in, where we should be at, every county in Arkansas in turnback dollars would get $1.8 million more dollars. I'm telling you, you give $1.8 million to my 6 counties, then they can do a lot with it.
Sure.
So the biggest problem is, in looking at the long term of this thing, is legislature can talk all they want to. 8% of the corrections, hurting your county turnback dollars, is going to kill us. But we also need the other thing, is we talked about, we need an intake facility up here. You look at the cost of transporting prisoners for Benton and Washington County, we need an intake facility up here. We've got to look at a lot of different options rather than this mega prison in this one site location. I'm for extra beds. But Sheriff Runyon, you talked in there that there's land in Sebastian County, and somebody else told me, is that correct, that the county owns, but they could build a jail there, but they're not passing a tax? Is that correct?
They have, I'm sorry, Sebastian County has bought some acres for a future building of a facility, hopefully. But until the public's willing to pass a tax for, like I said, 80 million, that's just a guess. Right now, that's not palatable to them.
Well, if the state can look at that location to do a not a partnership, but look at the facility part, look how much 35 miles of water and sewer is going to cost out to this location. So there's a lot of things that we can do that have to be more economically, because if we get in this situation like these other states, you've spent $600–700 million. These consultants don't care like Veneer. They make a percentage. They want the most expensive location because they're going to cash out. In 6–7 years, Veneer will be gone, taking our money, and we're going to be dumped in a situation. That's what I'm trying to avoid. But I can say, Sebastian County, we need to do that. Mental health facilities. We talked about that and what I want to do. And I've talked to the Board of Corrections and Chairman Magnus and some of them about looking at these rural hospitals that are going down. Can we look at this situation? And I'll give you an example, because I don't want this myth thing that I'm against everything. That's the lie that gets told by these people. So if you look at Huntsville, for example, they had an old hospital, was later converted to a nonprofit nursing home. It recently sold to a private care facility for $4 million. You know, a situation like that, and I'm not saying it's going to work out, could have been enclosed. You know, I can tell you Madison County at one time in 17 was interested in a facility. Okay, could have been enclosed, we could have spent $4 or $5 million. That's 105 beds that could have been converted to an intake facility. It's at least an option. And if we don't look at the long-term part of getting your money, the county judges and the cities, more turnback dollars, then we're never going to get out of this. They can beat their chest all they want to, but this is all going to take a major consideration of money. But 1.8 million to your budget would be significant in helping you. Is that right? Would you turn down 1.8 million if our budget was back to the percentage where I think it should be?
Well, I'll take all the money you want to give me, but it's going to be different for my county as it would one of the larger counties. But yes, that would help everybody.
Yeah.
So,
do you want to hold state inmates?
No. I do not want to hold state inmates. So that's the problem. What we're looking at is $1.8 million. If it comes back to us, that's a lot of money. But it costs more money to hold a state inmate than it does state county inmates.
And I understand that. You know, it used to be when I came in, a lot of rural counties would use it to help cash flow. The cost of everything's went up where they can't do that anymore. It's not economical. So I agree with, I don't want state inmates in counties, but sometimes economically, if we're looking 8 years down the road on this thing, they'll be lucky to be 1,000 prisoners up there. And we'll be lucky to have 250 people working up there at that one site location.
Senator King, to add, I mean, your sheriffs, we've all talked about this. We don't care where it's built. We don't care if it's 1,000 bed jail 3 different times over. We just know the number is going to increase until it can level off. I believe the numbers will level off because these criminals are not wanting to go to prison for 7 years. But they know 2 months a year.
But as a state, we can't pick one site location that's going to cost $200 million more, as Fort Smith has said, and you look at Hook-only Center, we can't spend that on any more than you can looking at a county jail facility and tell your voters, oh, well, I can build this one location, it's going to cost, you know, $25 million more, or this other location is going to cost $5 million. We have to look at that because we cannot continue to afford what we're doing and spending. And I can say to you that this thing of this lie against everything, I want to see you guys have more county turnback dollars to manage your money. Unfortunately, the legislature continues to underfund that and underfund corrections with money with 8% of the corrections. I'm for corrections this last time, as I said, should have got $130 million more out of general revenue. That's why we're in this location is because of money. That's it. And the only way we're going to do that is try and get money. But We also need an intake facility. I think Benton County, I can talk to you. We need an intake facility up here that would help out. We also have to address mental health in that. And that's why it's so important to get the site location and everything right, because we get underwater, like this situation is horribly underwater right now. We've got to get the right, most economically, to save money to do money with.
All right, Senator King, we're to cut you off. It's 15-6. Senator, Representative Rice, your question. All right.
Thank you guys for being here. That's one thing I want to do is thank y'all. But through the years, every one of you know that we have battled and battled $40, $38, $39, $40, $41 for a prisoner. Okay. Now, let's just take the building and just put it aside and look at the situation that we've got here. We've got $41 a prisoner. And this new facility is going to cost over $85 million a year to run. So, I mean, I can see that if possibly we couldn't, build this, if we could do a grant system, possibly a grant system for you sheriffs to build on. Possibly. Because I know one thing, you can't keep going like this.
The problem is the county jails. The problem is county jails are not made to hold. We're not made to hold felons. County jails weren't built to shoulder the state's prison load. We're spending local tax dollars on that. Even if there was a grant issue, this diverts resources from local needs and undermines our ability to do the misdemeanor justice. If we could do that, we're going to stop some of the recidivism. If we could hold DWI number 2 for 30 days, he may not get that third and fourth, then go to prison. Those that are misdemeanor thefts and trespassing, if we can get them and give them 10 days, that may stop them. It's the broken window theory.
So when the Protect Arkansas law was passed, it was a great thing. We supported it 110% because we knew something had to be done with our violent criminals. I asked for one thing only. Before you build it, before we pass this bill, we've got to have a place to put them. We've got to have a place to put them because even then we were at 1,800, 1,600. We were holding that many. We couldn't take more. And they assured me that's not going to happen. We're going to pass this bill. We're going to find a place to keep them. We're going to make Arkansas safe. And that's all the sheriffs care about. Right. That's all we care about. This is our job. It's their job to keep our citizens safe. And to do that, we've got to lock these violent criminals up. They've got to stay there. We've got to have the room. And I think, listening to everybody talk all day, we're on the same page. Everybody's on the same page. They understand the need, okay? We've been through this 100 times. Everybody understands we need the beds. Now it's a question of how, where, and how we're going to do it. You can't hold them in the state, in our county jails, Representative Rye, because they don't get treatment while they're there. When they're in our county jails, they're just sitting there. You get somebody in your county jail on a 10-year term, they serve, how it used to be, they only serve 2, correct? They only do 2. So if they sit in our county jail for a year and a half, almost 2 years, they've done their time with no treatment, no nothing. They'd go down, turn around, get back out, and probably be back in our facility within the year.
Well, the felons
so
allowed to be there.
That's kind of that's why we were excited about the Protect Arkansas. We just got to find a place. And I hope that, I'm going to let Jay talk before we quit, but I hope everybody somehow can get on the same page because we all have to protect our citizens. That's all of our jobs. It's not just ours. We're the physical guys. You guys are the law guys to make sure it happens. We do what the law says to do, and we need y'all's help. We need you guys to come together somehow and figure this out, where we can lock these people up that need to be locked up. That's what we're asking. Jay, you have a comment? I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate all of y'all taking the time to come up here today and listen to us, and this is a very important topic for us sheriffs. Listen, just quickly, I have the second biggest jail in Arkansas. 710 beds. This morning we had 725. The problem is everybody's talked about with county jails is the separation aspect of it. We can't, we have so many different classifications we have to separate. For one, we hold men and women. We have to separate those. We have the violent and the nonviolent. We have so many people now that are administratively segregated, that either have mental health issues, or they're violent, or they have incompatibilities with other detainees, that they can't be around other people. So with 166 state inmates in my jail today, I have 125 sleeping on the floor because I don't have enough places to put everybody. So I have people stacked in, 45 people in a 32-bed cell block because I have a 32-bed block over here. They don't have enough people that meet that classification. So if I had my 166 state detainees at the state, I wouldn't have anybody sleeping on the floor. I'd be able to manage my population. We should be at about 80% at the county level of our maximum. So I should be at about 580 for my maximum count. But you all understand that, and I think everybody here seems to be in agreement that we've got to do something, and I appreciate that. It's just that we've got to take some action, and whatever that action is, we've got to get together and agree on getting something done. Thank you all for attending and listening to us.
Gentlemen, thank you all for what you do and for coming today.
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate you. Now, the county judges, come forward. Each one of you will identify yourself. State which county you're in.
Rusty McMillan, Greene County Judge.
I'm Matt Brumley, I'm the Saline County Judge.
I'm Troy Tucker, the Clark County Judge. And I'm Barry Mooring, Benton County Judge.
Gentlemen, whoever wants to start.
I guess I was tapped for that. Hold on a second.
I didn't get the table, but I got the mic. Need my glasses.
So I want to be extremely brief because I think there's been some really, really good points made here today. And I think a lot of what we would say has been said one way or the other. But I was in a meeting a few months ago, and I was in a meeting with some of our sheriff's staff. And I had one of the majors ask me a really pertinent question that I'm still struggling with today. He leaned over and he said, "So what happens when we need all the money?" And it was a really good question, because on the trajectory we're on now in Benton County, with jail costs increasing by 7% a year, there comes a point when the sheriff's office, and particularly the jail, not the sheriff's office patrol, but the jail, they're gonna need it all. And that's something that we really have to contend with. And I think there's been a lot of great points made here today, but I think one that's particularly pertinent for us in the county jail system is this idea of the imbalance between felonies and misdemeanors. You've heard this term, there is no misdemeanor justice. Well, that's true in Benton County. I hate to say that out loud because we're a great county, we have a lot of great counties represented here today. But this is where, as Sheriff Holloway indicated, this is where the system is really breaking down, is that we don't have misdemeanor justice because our jail is full of felons, a significant number of which should be in a state prison. In Benton County, we know we share a lot of that responsibility. We're growing. We've tried to go to voters to get a long-term jail passed. It did not pass. We went with a fairly modest sales tax to do that. We're coming up with some other options, one of which we brought to the legislature this last session, which would simply allow our voters the ability to look at this countywide sales tax we have today and look at how that's allocated. That did not pass, but that might be an option. But we're looking at a lot of options. I've also heard earlier about all the different courts. We've got them. We've got your mental health court. We've got your veterans court. We've got all the different courts and all those kinds of diversion programs. But at the end of the day, the felony population is eating up the budget of Benton County. The entire general fund, 70% of our entire general fund now, is taken by law enforcement courts. And the fastest growing part of that is the jail. So I guess I'd come back to with what one of the pleas was earlier. We need more space taken on by the state. I know you guys have a really tough job as to where that space is going to be. prisons, intake centers, whatever the case might be. But at the county level, we better get some relief because we are going to be in a much even more difficult situation than we are today. I thank you for your time.
I don't think there's anything that any of us judges could say that hasn't probably already been stated today. I think our primary reason for being here is to support our county sheriffs and the difficult task that they have in managing the inmates that they are inundated with in the county jails. My background is 35 years in law enforcement. 14 of those years was county sheriff, 8 of those was for the city of Hot Springs, and I've been judge now for close to 10. And I can tell you that this issue in 1983, which has already previously been stated, we've been dealing with that since that long, literally. We've talked about misdemeanor justice. As has previously been stated, there really isn't any misdemeanor justice right now. I've had inmates, when I worked for the city of Hot Springs, that I would arrest and literally, I'm telling you, they would literally laugh in your face and tell you, I'll be out before you get out of the parking lot. And that was true. On the separation of the inmates, I know one of the sheriffs did speak about that a while ago. I think that that's probably something that may be overlooked sometimes because at least in our jail, we had a misdemeanor side and we had a felony side. But even on that felony side, you know, the sheriffs are responsible for separating those inmates from convicted and non-convicted inmates. And something that, you know, you have to take into consideration is when that circuit court issues that order and that paperwork is processed and it says delivered to the Arkansas Department of Correction, the sheriffs lose some leverage over that inmate because at that point, they don't really care. And that creates a tremendous problem for the jail staff having to try to manage that inmate because he knows at that point he's gone. It's just a matter of when we can get him gone. And that's what this whole point of the conversation is today, is we need them gone sooner than later. So thank y'all. I truly respect everyone's position on this, the Arkansas Department of Correction. I respect y'all's position on it too. I know there's a lot of concern. There should be. You're looking at it from a financial point of, and it should be looked at that way. Just as judges, we have to do the same thing in our counties. But it needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon. So any relief that you can give us, I think we would appreciate that. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having us. I'm going to be as quick as I can. I want to start off by saying just Amendment 55 in 1414-801 prohibit counties from declaring felonies, meaning a felon is a state issue and not a county issue. So fundamentally, this thing just starts off wrong. Fundamentally, it's as wrong as an urgent care center doing open heart surgery. They need to be somewhere that does open heart surgery. We have mentally ill, violent people staying year plus in a county jail. And it just fundamentally, it's wrong. Everything I say, I respect the challenges that you have and have had over the years. It was said earlier, there's upwards of 3,154 beds that have been added over the past 10 years. Again, the county, we're putting out almost one a day on our side over the last decade. Saline County, we needed 160 beds. Currently, our ratio for a county our class is the worst in the state for resident to jail bed ratio. We needed 160 to get close to where we felt like we needed to be. Yet, we will open up 82 beds, which is all that we could afford, which is about $740 per square foot for us to build this 82 bed extension of our jail. $110,000 a bed is what that's causing us. We spoke about the 170,000 unserved warrants, 26,239 of those are felony warrants. If those things could be served, what would that do to our already encumbered system? Cost has been talked about. We get 4